Okay, I couldn't decide if I should
Can I see you a minute, please?
Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Tuesday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Tuesday morning. How's it going? Dakapolion, Astro, Kal-El, how's it going, everybody? Welcome, howdy, howdy. What is the clock app? Tired? Oof. Muted? Wait, am I muted? Oh, TikTok.
Please clap.
Yeah, I wouldn't, I mean, I guess it's possible, but TikTok is also a place where only the best political takes are done. Only rivaled by Twitter. All okay. Okay, good. Howdy, howdy. Well, isn't that why Texas seceded? They wanted to keep them, so I guess it makes sense. Yeah, like I said, it's possible. It wouldn't surprise me if that was a reason. Yeah, put it that way. I can also say that, wasn't the origin of the cowboy, due to slavery or something like that? I know for sure that Mexico offered freedom to escape slaves, that's for sure. That part I do know for sure. Thank you for the shout out. Yeah, of course. Folks, we've got a lot of stuff to go through. Where do we even begin? Where do we even begin? As you can see behind me, we've introduced the holiday spirit. I've got my there we go. I've got my little Christmas tree, Yule tree. The Republican machine working overtime, but history is another machine. True. I am familiar with the word gaucho. Yeah, but gaucho is very specific. Yeah, it's an interesting theory, that's for sure. Gaucho is another is referring to, I believe, like what's, I want to say South America. It would be like the I want to say cowboy of the South America or Central America, if I'm correct. That's where gaucho comes from. Oh yeah, the little holiday tree, the little Yule tree. I got my yeah, my left side. Wait, is it my, yeah, I guess it would be you guys would be seeing it on the left side to my right. To my right, your left. Yeah. Really getting into the, into that, holiday spirit. I think my favorite part about holidays is just, all the time off, right? All the, back-to-back, vacation. The back-to-back vacation this December. I am going to Tennessee. Xmas, the right wing of Carlos. True. Very true. I am going up to Tennessee. So I'm very excited. Very excited to not work. Fam in Tennessee? No, there's a wedding. A non-biological brother is getting married, so we are heading up to Tennessee, and they decided to get married in the mountains in the middle of winter. In the middle of winter. I wonder if it's, like, cold. Like, and what I mean by cold, I mean, like, really, really cold. I suspect it is, right? In the, Smoky Mountains, I think. Smoky Mountains. Would that be it? Would that be the right? Yeah, I think so. RDHDB. How's it going? Conctor, how's it going? Sounds awesome. Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm here for it. I'm here for the trip. I'm here for the exploring. I'm here for the exploring. I'm not taking a airplane, so stream from my iPhone. Well, I would need an iPhone first. No, I'm not gonna stream that. I might have content prepared. I might have content prepared for the 3 days that I won't be here. So don't worry. Don't worry. I know for sure at least one of those days I have covered. Definitely cold for a Florida boy. True. Anything that's below 70 is cold. These are facts. It's like 70 something, just above 70. And I'm already wearing a, albeit very thin sweater, but a sweater nonetheless. A jacket, I guess. To be fair, it's the thinnest of thinnest jackets. We should start at the beginning. Yeah, that's a good one. 37? No way. That's whew. That's gonna be a no from me. That's gonna be a no from me. I've been in 37-degree weather. It's cold. It's cold. You gotta have a good amount of layers. I don't live outside though, so it's fine. True. I mean, if you've got it nice and toasty in your house, then you're good to go. Bree lives outside. She loves the cold weather. Bring on the snow. I've never seen snow, so I am what? We'll say 30 something. We'll say like just above 20. But under 35. And I have never seen snow. I've been in very cold weather, about that temperature, 37, maybe a little bit more, but never to the point of seeing snow. Never to the point of seeing snow. In fact, the last time I went to visit the co-host Bree up in Georgia. The weekend, no, the 2 days after we came back, it actually snowed. It actually snowed, so I missed it by like 2 days. Well, maybe you'll get lucky. Yeah, I'm expecting it to be really cold, especially up in Tennessee, in the mountains. I expect it to be very cold. The weather app says they're about 37 right now. Oof. Yeah, definitely gonna need some layering. Definitely gonna need to do some layering. You get your layers right, a good thermal underneath, and you're good to go. I went up to Iceland and up a glacier was minus 20. No way. No. That's way too much. Nah. It's already cold. It's already cold. As it is. No snow for me. I ride a bike. That shit sucks. What? I mean, I couldn't tell you. I've never seen snow. But I bet it does because it's cold. The Northern Lights were amazing. Yeah, one of these days, I would love to see that. I gotta put it on my list of things to do at some point, eventually, maybe, hopefully, right? Saturday in Massachusetts will probably be snowing. Oof. Oh, I hope I get to see snow. Thinking Sabercat, how's it going? Howdy. So far, no snow on the schedule for NYC. Oh yeah, no, I'm not going that far. Howdy. Alright folks, we've got the gauntlet to run through, so let's get through some of these here. Interesting development. Trump called aides hours before the Capitol riot to discuss how to stop the Biden victory. Interesting. Hours before the deadly attack on the US Capitol this year, Donald Trump made several calls from the White House to top lieutenants at the Willard Hotel in Washington and talked about ways to stop the certification of Joe Biden's election win from taking place on January 6. The former president first told the lieutenants his Vice President Mike Pence was reluctant to go along with the plan to commandeer his largely ceremonial role at the joint session of Congress in a way that would allow Trump to retain the presidency for a second term. Yeah, I mean, like, this guy is forever mad. But as Trump relayed to them the situation with Pence, he pressed his lieutenants about how to stop Biden's certification from taking place on January 6th and delayed the certification process to get alternate slates of electors for Trump sent to Congress. Jesus Christ. The former president's remarks came as part of a strategy discussions he had with the White House with lieutenants at the Willard, a team led by Trump lawyers Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Boris Epshteyn, and Trump strategist Steve Bannon about delaying the certification. I would also like to remind people that Steve Bannon is the same guy who has tried to, quote, kill the Biden presidency in its crib. Wait, yeah, kill the Biden presidency in the crib. We've had snow, ice, and power lines down in northern England and Scotland already. Yikes. Yeah, Astro, that's definitely approaching those levels, that's for sure. Submersion, traitorous. The former president's remark came as strategy. Oh yes, multiple sources speaking to The Guardian on the condition of anonymity described Trump's involvement in an effort to subvert the results of the 2020 election. Trump's remarks reveal a direct line from the White House and the command center at the Willard. The command center. Listen, this was this was to tell me that this wasn't like coordinated in any way, shape, or form is starting to look a lot like that narrative is starting to kind of fall flat. The idea that this is some type of spontaneous event. There's no coordination involved. Yeah, not looking good. Trump did say 5 times, wants the title and protection, and still does. False election on November 20. Yeah, exactly. It's like a year actually now. It's past a year already. Almost a year and a month. And we're still at this. It's starting to look a lot like bullshit. True. The conversation also shows Trump's thoughts appear to be in line with motivations of the pro-Trump mob that carried out the Capitol attack and halted Biden's certification until it was later ratified by Congress. The former president's call to the Willard Hotel about stopping the Biden certification is increasingly a central focus of the House Select Committee's investigation into the Capitol attack, as it raises the specter of a possible connection between Trump and the insurrection. Yeah, I mean, like, even if he didn't say, like, go do an insurrection, I mean, like, there's just no way he wasn't involved. Several Trump lawyers at the Willard that night denied Trump sought to stop the certification of Biden's election win. They say they only considered delaying Biden's certification at the request of state legislator because of voter fraud. Nice meme. At that point, there were several cases that were litigated, and none of them had any merit so far. As far as we can tell, there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that there was some type of widespread voter fraud or even election fraud, to be quite frank. This was just a standard election, and the only thing that was unique about it was that there was a unprecedented turnout that hasn't been seen in quite some time. I believe 100 years? That's the difference. See the remixed rows on YouTube? Over 700 people arrested from January 6th, that's right. Have you seen that bandit might be getting a cell, buddy? No. Biggest election fraud ever, accusing the winner of fraud and getting your followers to commit crimes to try to stop the election. True. The former president made several calls to the lieutenants at the Willard on the night of before January 6th. He phoned the lawyers and non-lawyers separately, as Giuliani did not want non-lawyers to participate on legal calls and jeopardize attorney-client privilege. Okay, but remember, he wasn't didn't Trump say that he's not like his lawyer? I don't get it. Trump's call to the lieutenants came a day after Eastman, a late addition to the Trump legal team, outlined at a January 4th meeting at the White House how he thought Pence could usurp his role in order to stop Biden's certification from happening at the joint session. At the meeting, which was held in the Oval Office, attended by Trump Pence and Pence's chief of staff Mark Short and his legal counsel Greg Jacob, Eastman presented a memo that detailed how Pence could insert himself into the certification and delay the process. Yeah, even if this was, like, let's assume that this is exactly how this happened. There's just no way that Pence could have done anything. The memo outlines several ways for Pence to commandeer his role at the joint session, including throwing the election to the House, or adjourning the session to give states time to send slates of electors for Trump on the basis of election fraud. Okay, but you'd have to prove it, right? You'd have to prove all of this. Eastman told The Guardian last month that the memo only presented scenarios and it was not intended as advice. The advice I gave... Okay, so yeah, this is, legit. The advice I gave the vice president was very explicitly that I did not think he had the authority to simply to declare which electors to count. Trump seized on the memo, first reported by Washington Post journalists Bob Woodard and Robert Costa in their book Peril, and pushed Pence to adopt the schemes which some of the other lieutenants at the Willard later told Trump were legitimate ways to flip the election. Oh man. The delusion. The delusion. The signaling doesn't do it justice. The signaling doesn't do it what? The signaling isn't just limited to Trump, as Vaughn has gotten some pushback with his Discord targeting Riley Grace over odd footage. Really, the possible deniability is kind of gross to me and cowardly. What do you mean, like Trump? Yeah, I guess. When you're friends with a lawyer, everything is a secret. That's how it works, right? True. Did we ever get a count of how many there were? We don't know. Not an exact count, but I think they were in the tens of thousands at the rally that became the insurrection. The Electoral College serves another insulating layer with certification process and slate of electors. That's right. But at the same time, we wouldn't need any of this if it was just by popular vote, right? We wouldn't be having we wouldn't have this issue if it was popular vote, right? We would just count the votes, and that's it. Whoever got the most votes got the most winner. Whoever got the most votes is the winner, and that's it. Could argue for recounts. Okay. But, yeah, that would have solved that problem easily. From the White House, Trump made several calls to lieutenants, including Giuliani, Eastman, I'm going to call this guy Epstein, and Bannon, who were huddled in suits complete with espresso machines and cokes in a mini fridge in the northwest corner of the hotel. Jesus Christ. On the calls, the former president first recounted what had transpired in the Oval Office meeting with Pence, informing Bannon and the lawyers at the Willard that his vice president appeared to be ready to abandon him at the joint session in several hours' time. Like, abandon him? Like, what do you mean? Like, Mike Pence never had the authority to do anything except act as, like, a ceremonial, it acted a ceremonial, like, just ceremony, I guess ceremony, right? It's not like he's just going through it. Jeffrey Clark may be arrested as he's currently dodging a subpoena to explain his attempts to block Biden from taking office. Yep. History's full of examples. Figurehead. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's a better term. Thank you, Dacapolion. Where governments have neglected election because they control the process. That is true. That is not something, that has happened. Yes, absolutely. You're correct, Kinetic Pause. One of the advantages of the EC is that it isn't a part of the incumbent government. Yeah, but I guess, but I mean, there's no if, and, or buts about it, right? If somebody gets more votes, I mean, what are you supposed to do? You can dispute it. The judicial branch is not part of the incumbent government per se. You can dispute a election that way, but I think it would be simpler, right? I don't know. He's arrogant. Trump, for instance, told Bannon of Pence his own way of communicating that Pence was unlikely to play ball in an exchange reported in peril and confirmed by The Guardian. But on at least one of those calls, Trump also sought from the lawyers at the Willard ways to stop the joint session from ensuring Biden would not be certified as president on January 6th as part of a wider discussion about buying time to get states to send Trump electors. The fallback that Trump and his lieutenants appeared to settle on was to cajole Republican members of Congress to raise enough objections so that even without Pence adjourning the joint session, the certification process would be delayed for states to send Trump slates. I mean, like, imagine going through this. Imagine going through all this and still not understanding how this works. The vice president has no active powers, really. The only major vice president who broke the mold was Dick Cheney, and that was mainly because George W. was indecisive on things. Well, to be fair, the vice president does have, like, powers. It was not clear whether Trump discussed on the call about the prospect of stopping Biden's certification by any means if Pence refused to insert himself in the process, but the former president said to have enjoyed watching the insurrection unfold from the dining room. I wouldn't be surprised, to be quite honest. The lead Trump lawyer at the Willard, Giuliani, appearing to follow that fallback plan, called at least one Republican senator later that evening, asking him to help keep Congress adjourned and stall the joint session beyond January 6th. In a voicemail recorded at about 7 p.m. January 6th, reported by the Dispatch, Giuliani implored Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville to object to 10 states Biden won once Congress reconvened at 8 p.m., a process that would have concluded 15 hours later, close to January 7th. The only strategy we can follow is to object to numerous states and raise issues that we could get ourselves into tomorrow, ideally until the end of tomorrow. Liz Harrington, a spokesperson for Trump, disputed the account of Trump's call after the publication. This is totally false, without giving specific. Oh yeah, it just didn't happen. So the response to that is just wrong, and that's it. Cool. Nice meme. Trump made several calls the day before the Capitol attack from both the White House residence, his preferred place to work, as well as the West Wing, but it was not certain from which location he phoned his top lieutenants at the Willard. The White House residence and its yellow oval room, Trump's favorite. A Trump favorite is significant since communications there, including from a desk phone, are not automatically memorialized in records sent to the National Archives at the end of an administration. Interesting. But even if Trump called his lieutenants from the West Wing, the Select Committee may not be able to fully uncover the extent of its involvement in the events of January 6th unless House investigators secure testimony from individuals with knowledge of these calls. That difficulty arises since calls from the White House are not necessarily recorded, and call detail records that the Select Committee is suing to pry free from the National Archives over Trump's objections about executive privilege only showed the destination of the calls. Yeah, so you may not get the exact complete call, but I mean, you can make the connection, right? I think you can make the connection. The destination would be to the Willard Hotel, which can kind of obviously point the way, right? That's right, not limited to, but including the power of President of the Senate. Yep. Which is why, at this point in time, this vice president has a more involved role than normal. The House Select Committee investigators this month opened a new line of inquiry into activities at the Willard Hotel just across the street from the White House, issuing subpoenas to Eastman and former New York Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik, an assistant to Giuliani. Yeah, I suspect that we're going to find out a lot more information. That's for sure. The chairman of Select Committee, Benny Thompson, said in a statement that the panel is pursuing the Trump officials at the Willard to uncover every detail about their efforts to overturn the election, including who they were talking to in the White House and in Congress. Yeah, I think that would be important to know. Follow up. This one we're just going to do this one really quickly. The House Select Committee investigating the Capitol attack announced on Monday that it will vote to recommend the criminal prosecution of former Trump Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark after he defied a subpoena seeking his cooperation with the inquiry. A move to pursue contempt of Congress charges against Clark reflects the Select Committee's aggressive approach to warn recalcitrant witnesses against attempting to derail their investigation as Trump tried during his administration. Members on the Select Committee will convene on Wednesday evening to vote on the contempt report, which is expected to be unanimous according to a source familiar with the matter, and send it to a vote before the full House of Representatives. Yep. So another one. You can't just say no to legally issued subpoenas, and there are consequences for said actions. Sorry. There are consequences for said actions. I really want this investigation to end, and I want to see every single compilation of what exactly happened. So I suspect in the following months we'll know. Recalcitrant? Yeah, something like that. Recalcitrant. Recalcitrant? Recalcitrant. That sounds right. That's what I'm gonna go with. That's what I'm gonna go with. But Trump ordered the code red. I don't know what he did or did not do. One thing is clear. There is a mounting evidence that he was directly involved. Very disturbing. Mountain Dew. Now that's something I haven't had in quite some time. Mountain Dew Code Red. Do they still sell those? I'm pretty sure they do, right? No idea. I remember really loving Code Red and Gamer Fuel. G Fuel. Is that the same as G Fuel? Is Gamer Fuel the same thing as G Fuel? It came out with Halo or some shit. Not sure if it's the same. Huh. It happens when people vote in a reality TV star. True. Ah. Thank you, Dakapolion. Yeah, okay, so we got confirmation there. Hey, Celtic Taboo. MD Livewire is my favorite. Mountain Dew Livewire. What? I forgot about that one. Baja Blast is my favorite. That's the one that they sell in Taco Bell, right? That's the one they sell in Taco Bell? Or do they sell that separately? I remember buying energy drinks just for gaming codes. Yeah, by the way, I think I want to say Red Bull. But with the upcoming release for Halo, Red Bull is doing a thing for Halo. Breaking. This is from A More Perfect Union, not to be confused with the cringe right-wing streamer. This is a Twitter account for labor. Breaking, the National Labor Relations Board has officially granted a rerun of the Amazon union election in Bessemer, Alabama. As we reported at the time, Amazon illegally interfered in the March election. The date and method of the new elections are yet to be determined. Today, the director of Region 10 of the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, formally issued a decision and direction of a second election granting workers at Amazon in Bessemer, Alabama, a new election based on retail, wholesale, and department store unions' objections to Amazon's conduct during the union election conducted in the spring of 2021. Stuart Applebaum, president of Retail, Wholesale, Department Store Union, issued the following immediate reaction. Quote, today's decision confirms that what we were saying all along, Amazon's intimidation and interference prevented workers from having a fair say in whether they wanted a union in their workplace. And as the regional director has indicated, that is both unacceptable and illegal. Amazon workers deserve to have a voice at work, which can only come from a union. The RWDSU charged Amazon with illegal misconduct during the union vote in Bessemer, Alabama. In August, the hearing officer who presided over the case determined that Amazon violated labor law. Who would have thought, right? And recommended the regional director to set aside the results of the election and direct a second election. The date and method of the new election are yet to be determined. Congratulations. That's actually really good news. That is actually really good. It started as a Taco Bell exclusive for like 10 plus years, and now they have bottle it and sell it in stores. It's better out of a fountain, true. I have not had Mountain Dew Baja Blast or Mountain Dew anything in quite some time, to be quite honest.
Something suspicious happened in the middle of Amazon's union election in Bessemer, Alabama. For most of the 2-month election, mail ballots trickled in each day to the National Labor Relations Board, a few dozen at a time. But all of a sudden, on February 12, a huge batch of 251 ballots arrived at the NLRB office in Birmingham. The pace of incoming ballots went back to normal. But then, it happened again. On February 17, according to people with knowledge of the election, another huge cluster of ballots appeared at the NLRB, 350 in total, on one day. Sources say these dumps of ballots were overwhelmingly no votes against the union. What was going on here? The answer appears to be a serious attempt by Amazon to manipulate the results of the union election.
Much more rare than beer, I feel that. That's not uncommon, and second elections for unions have a higher failure rate. What? I think that this is, well, I mean, quite clear evidence of Amazon interfering, which is, again, maybe, there is a, maybe you're correct, this is not uncommon, right? That companies are usually very, adept at union busting.
So serious that it appears very likely that the National Labor Relations Board will overturn the results. And in that event, should the Retail Workers Union demand it, the NLRB could call for the election to be rerun. Why did so many no votes, roughly 20% of all votes cast, suddenly appear on 2 key dates in February? According to the RWDSU, the only plausible explanation for the vote dumps is that they were the ballots collected from the mailbox that Amazon illegally installed in the middle of the night on the campus of the Bessemer warehouse.
On the second night after ballots went out in the mail, we started getting calls from workers that said like, oh my God, they put this box up here and they're telling everybody to put their ballots in it and we're scared, we don't want to put our ballots in there. Like, who has the keys to the box? Does Amazon have them?
More Perfect Union obtained Postal Service documents about the Amazon mailbox. For no apparent reason, much of the text is redacted. But the documents show that Amazon wanted a ballot box installed as quickly as possible. And the documents discuss how to physically manipulate the box to allow for mass ballot collection.
As you can imagine, that can open it up to a lot of coercion, a lot of intimidation on the part of the employer.
True. Yeah, that always was a bit weird. I need to stop drinking soda, but it's free at work, so I can't help but take advantage of that. Yeah, I get it. Dacapolyon. It took me a while to really slow down on the soda. I used to drink a lot of soda. Now it's a like Kal-El says, it's a rare occasion, even rarer than drinking beer.
Compelling or forcing employees to come and use the ballot box that they've installed at their location.
This mailbox, which Amazon installed in violation of explicit guidance from the federal government, is key to understanding how Amazon illegally coerced workers and manipulated the results of the election.
We received reports of intimidation and coercion. We've seen communications where they've essentially threatened that there would be a layoff because of the union. And that's what would be considered a hallmark violation of the act.
The union election was set to begin on February 8, but Amazon had been hard at work for weeks prior to that, putting in place a systemic, coordinated effort to engineer the outcome it wanted. Amazon
I've been switching it up and drinking coffee by the gallon. Oh man, oof. Coffee isn't something that I have given up yet. I require at least 2 to 3 cups to get my day started. Ooh.
Information services to create classes that workers were forced to attend. Workers were subjected to mandatory anti-union meetings, sometimes 2 to 3 times per week.
So the entire month of January, you went to one every week. Some people went to more than one a week. They'd say stuff to you like, everything's on the table when you negotiate with the union. We could take everything away. You know, you could lose your pay, your benefits.
Some of those who shared with me on breaks is that they're afraid because Amazon told them in the meeting, the union buster said that if you get the union, then your benefits will be taken away. And so some of the younger people are kind of confused and have been told that the union is a bad thing.
When workers asked pro-union questions, managers came back to scan their badges in an apparent effort to document pro-union workers.
I asked like 3 questions to make them tell the truth.
Yeah.
When I got back to work, the PA came to me. I saw her pass everybody, and she came to me and she said, "Let me see your badge." She said, "Because when they scanned it in the class, yours didn't go through." So she scanned my badge and I watched her. She never scanned anybody else's badge because I was the one that brought out the question that will make them tell the truth about the raises or the union dues and stuff like that.
When the election began, the classes were mandated by law to end, but Amazon transitioned to a new phase of its campaign. It compelled Jefferson County to change the traffic light signals outside the Bessemer warehouse to rob the union of one of its most effective messaging tactics, speaking to workers at red lights as they headed into the office warehouse. Meanwhile, Amazon pummeled workers with anti-union messaging via text messages, Twitch ads, and notes on bathroom stalls and break rooms. Do it without dues, Amazon propaganda explained.
Every time we go to the bathroom in your stall, in the men's bathroom, as soon as you go to the...
This almost sounds like the same complaint as people have against mail-in ballots or drop boxes. Yeah, but the difference is, this was, this would be as if like the Democratic Party or the Republican Party brushed and bullied their way into making sure that they have specific drop boxes in specific areas that they want, and then they would be the ones to collect it. Do you see the difference? Because these things were brought up in a lot of litigation for 2020, Pat Rat. It didn't go anywhere because there is no evidence to suggest of any shenanigans. Here, the NLRB determined that there was legitimate shenanigans, and that's why they're having a new election. That's the difference. There's actually documented evidence of shenanigans. That's why they're having a new election.
The stall, you got an anti-union flyer right there in front of you. You got flyers in the break room. You got when you walking in and walking out, you got big banners saying early vote, vote no.
When the election began on February 8th, Amazon deployed a concerted misinformation campaign targeted at its employees.
We've seen Amazon try to confuse people by telling them they needed to vote by March 1st, even though the deadline was March 29th. And the reason for that was to try to get people to cast their ballots right after the captive audience meetings and before they've had an opportunity to engage with the union.
Amazon felt if workers could be forced to vote quickly, they were likely to vote no. And once they voted no, they were not allowed to go back and change their vote. That's where the mailbox strategy came into play. If Amazon wanted workers to vote early, they needed a way to coerce and compel them to submit their ballots.
Not only have I never seen a company install or have a mailbox installed on their property for purposes of mail ballot election, I've never even heard of a company asking for such a thing.
Yeah, like, can you imagine if, like, I don't know, a political party saying, like, yeah, we want a mailbox specifically installed in our headquarters, and we'll be the ones collecting it. Do you see the difference there, Pat Rat? How is that illegal to, how is it not illegal to put anti-union propaganda in break rooms and, like, yeah, I guess. I mean, there's several violations that these folks did, but, yeah, it's kind of cringe.
Amazon initially asked the National Labor Relations Board if they could install a ballot drop box in the warehouse. The request was denied.
When the request was denied, went ahead and just disregarded what the board had said to them and installed it themselves. It's the first time I've seen that. And in fact, when I've talked to some of my management side friends on the other side, they're all flabbergasted by what really is pretty audacious on the part of Amazon.
On the second night of the vote, February 9th, the mailbox suddenly appeared, just steps from the entrance to the warehouse.
For workers, it's twofold. It's number one, if I'm a pro-union supporter and I'm
Captive audience law, you can't be coercive. There has to be a cooling off period before the vote. Should be tightened up, I think. Yeah, well, yeah, the thing is, like, the NLRB needs, like, legitimate teeth to enforce labor laws and labor protections. I think it's usually 24 hours, which is too short a time for cool off. Gotcha.
It gets here. And for those that maybe necessarily wouldn't have voted, maybe they were just kind of impartial to the idea and want to support their co-workers, but they also don't know a lot about the union. But now they've got this manager that's saying, hey, I've noticed you haven't voted yet. You didn't bring your ballot to the box. You should bring it tomorrow. Bring it and put it in the box.
The reason why you wouldn't want to have effectively have a polling place where the employer, at the employer's facility without the supervision of the board, is that the employer's supervisors will go around to these employees and say, you need to bring your ballot in, you know, you need to make sure you vote, and you'll have employees following their supervisor's instructions, bringing in their ballots to work, which they're not supposed to do, and feeling the pressure that they have to cast a ballot for the employer. And that's what the mailbox being installed at an employer's facility and to be used for the purposes of casting ballots creates this pressure on employees.
As the NLRB counted votes, Amazon deployed the last phase of its anti-union strategy. It challenged hundreds of ballots, specific ballots that were cast after March 1. Amazon was well aware that by March 1, the tide had swung in the union's favor in a major way.
And there should be no intimidation, no coercion, no threats, no anti-union propaganda.
Knowing that many of the post-March 1 votes were likely yes votes for the union.
About all of those things happened. There are plenty of anti-union laws. I'm surprised the NLRB is doing anything about this, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, like, that only tells me that the evidence was so clear-cut that they couldn't be ignored.
Amazon's lawyers aggressively challenged them. Amazon won by engaging in exactly the kind of coercion and intimidation that President Biden warned of.
Under Section 7 of the National Labor Relations Act, employees are guaranteed the right to decide the question of whether they want to organize or not in an environment free of coercion and intimidation.
We haven't heard the last from the courageous workers who took on Goliath. If the NLRB grants a new election, they'll be back, and it's likely they will have the votes to win. Something suspicious happened.
Well, I hope that the re-election goes their way, because this could be huge for labor, right? I mean, Amazon is literally a Goliath, and if a warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama is able to unionize, that may or may not, that may start off a chain reaction, because if they can do it, then anybody in any Amazon warehouse could, right? Just saying. Yeah, that would be really incredible. Yeah, so like that, the possible chain reaction that this could unleash would be fantastic for labor. Possibly. If a warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama could successfully unionize, then any warehouse, any Amazon warehouse could. The Teamsters want to help Amazon unionize, but they specifically didn't start in the USA because the labor laws are so bad. Yeah. Tell me, Lauren. This was a real tweet from a real person. This did happen. Will Twitch take a cut? Yeah. Unionize a stream place, true. I would love to say that this is a meme, but so many people are liking it and retweeting it. Alright, so we got one dab and one cute animal video. Okay, I think we could make it. One dab. And then we're gonna cover the cute animal video in just a second. Tommy Lauren, a real human being on Twitter, decided to post this. These are words. Spoiler alert: there'll be continued to be a new COVID variant until we reach the final strain of the virus called communism. I wasn't aware that communism was a Greek alphabet. Like, I'm sure a comrade has already tweeted this as a joke, and now we have this, which is not a joke. Yeah, I can't wait for the Greek letter communism, exactly. I accidentally decided to click on this person's profile. I really forgot about them, and I wish I did. But this really is a thing.
Okay, great. I'm sure the sheeple are already camping outside the CVS. Okay, great. I'm sure the sheeple are already
completely fine with Fox, by the way.
Mask
Fox platforms this.
ready for another shot. But no word yet if these people have considered healthy eating or exercise. Listen up, folks. COVID isn't going to be eradicated anytime soon, especially when tyrants have successfully used and weaponized it and its umpteen variants as a tool of control and oppression.
Yes, Tommy. Viruses mutate. Very good, Tommy.
But by all means, take safety and health precautions, get the vaccine and the booster if you want to. But if we as a nation are dumb enough to allow more restrictions, mandates, and infringements after 2 years of this BS, then we really do deserve to fall. Okay, great.
Jesus Christ. Perpetual fucking victimhood. Viruses don't care about warped political systems, that's true. These folks are terrifying, true. Here's another genius tweet. So we shut down the country for months and destroyed the economy and countless lives. And you're telling me there's another variant? Well, shit. It's almost like all of that was for nothing. What? So the alternative would be just do nothing and let, what, it be umpteenth amount worse? Yes, Tommy. There is another variant, and there will be more variants. It's almost like that's what viruses do. It's almost like not enough was done, correct. Anyways, I made the mistake of clicking through this person's Twitter. I really wish I forgot about them. But, yep. That's a real tweet from a real person, folks. With 1.6 million followers. Nice. Senate GOP blocks defense bill, throwing it into limbo. Senate Republicans on Monday blocked a mammoth defense bill, throwing the legislation into limbo as Congress heads into a packed year-end schedule. The Senate voted 45 to 51 to start winding down debate on the National Defense Authorization Act, which sets spending levels and policy for the Pentagon. But that is short of the 60 votes needed to overcome the hurdle. Senator Susan Collins was the only Republican to vote with Democrats to advance the bill, while Democratic Senator Ed Markey, Jeff Merkley, Elizabeth Warren, Ron Wyden, and Independent Senator Bernie Sanders voted against moving forward with the 46 GOP senators. The setback comes amid a stalemate on allowing votes on amendments to the bill. Leadership previously got a deal before Thanksgiving recess to allow for 18 amendment votes, but that agreement was blocked by several Republicans who didn't get their own proposals included. Democrats are leaving the door open to try to move the bill again. Senate Majority Leader Charles Schumer took steps on Monday night to make it easier to force the vote for a second time. Republicans just blocked legislation to support our troops, support our families, and keep Americans safe. Republican dysfunction has again derailed bipartisan progress, Schumer said from the Senate floor, calling the GOP stance inexplicable and outrageous. Well, it wasn't just the GOP, was it? It's almost as though viruses are living organisms who mutate from host to host. True. These bridges keep falling down. They said reinforcing them would work, but they keep getting worse, so I guess we should just let them fall. Certainly can repair them or replace them. No way. Costs too much. Yeah, so I don't know. Like, they're making a big deal about this defense bill, but the reality is this defense bill is massive. It is massive. It is unnecessarily massive. And to be quite frank, it could be taken down a notch or two, or 3 or 4 or 5. Despite this vote, Democrats will continue to work to make sure our troops get paid and our vital defense programs can continue. Hold on. Dr. Dragon Rider, I missed everything. Did they stop the Defense Act as leverage on the BBB, or is it bizarre world where we're passing 8 trillion legislation as they complain about giving childcare to people? I have no idea. Stop it, Kitty. How's it going, Dr. Dragon Rider? But Republicans are accusing Schumer of trying to jam the defense bill through the Senate after delaying it, bringing it to the floor. It can take up to 2 weeks to bring the defense bill up for debate to get a final vote. The Senate Arms Committee Service voted to advance the defense bill in July, and the delay in bringing it before the full Senate for a vote sparked frustration from Senate Republicans and the House Armed Service Committee Chairman Adam Smith. No matter how important it is, that doesn't mean that we'll accept the fact that Senator Schumer wants to jam it through the Senate without adequate consideration. Let me be clear, Senator Schumer has put us in this position today. He waited more than 2 months when we filed the NDAA to bring it to the floor. 2 months. The top Republican on the Armed Service Committee. As part of the deal that leadership tried to clear before the break, the Senate would have voted on 18 amendments, with Schumer noting that Inhofe and Armed Service Committee Chairman Jack Reed had also worked out a deal to include at least 50 amendments to the bill that would need a vote on each proposal. Of the 18 amendments, 11 were either GOP or bipartisan amendments, but several Republican senators blocked that package. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell on Monday pointed to several issues that the Republicans want to add additional amendments. Votes on additional amendment votes that were not part of the 18 amendment package offered before the Thanksgiving break. They include a proposal for sanctions related to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which has the backing of GOP Senators James Reich and Ted Cruz. The House passed a defense bill including the Nord Stream 2 related sanctions. Oh, so they want more, I think. That's the issue here. It was all going well. I hope Dems would hold this up, but it's the opposite. We are truly lost. True. Hey, Thandera, how's it going? They want sanctions on Nord Stream attached. Right. Nothing less than the safety of the American people is at stake. This is more important than political timetables or partisan wish lists. Listen, the fact that we are really considering a unnecessarily mammoth defense bill that would cost more than $9 trillion in 10 years is a threat to the American people, because we are diverting resources from important things that could actually help the American people. I'm not opposed to trying to stop a massive gas pipeline, but it shouldn't be tied up in this bill. Yeah, I mean, like, to be quite honest, the fact that this is so massive is in and of itself a cause for concern. I just got my booster like 20 minutes ago. Nice. Defense bills are a must pass. There's no way they won't pass it. I think it would need a giant mass movement outside. Yeah. China will wreck the US if we don't spend on defense. Wrong. And besides, why is that like the go-to? That's kind of weird. USA Whole rating with a party of 23. How's it going? Howdy, everybody. Welcome, welcome. How's it going, everybody? Thank you so much, USA Whole. If you guys don't know who we are A Difficult Truth. We do news and politics Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And join us for Saturday Catterdays around noon Eastern Time. I think it's just a stall. The Republicans won't stop defense spending. That's true. Lily Bonka, thank you for the follow. Howdy, howdy. China needs us as we need them. If we mess with them, supply chains would be not slow, just completely broken. Yep. I've got a cat in my lap, folks, so bear with me. See if I can get this shout out done. Folks, if you don't already follow, please follow and support twitch.tv/USAHole. Miss Derp, I'm going for my Moderna booster. Nice. Ow, kitty. Good thing the US strategically placed not, and neither China nor Russia really have any reaching navies for invasion. True. Like, I don't get it. It's saber rattling, I guess. Thanks for the shout out. Of course. Bad kitty. Yeah. She's like, listen, I know that you're in the middle of streaming right now, but you're the cat butler, and right now I need a comfortable couch, and it looks like your lap plus your arm will be sufficient. So yes, I believe so, Dakapolion. Correct, Willy Bonka. How's it going, Darknet? So, excuse me, my movement is a little bit limited now. You're a roommate, you have it backwards, you're lucky to get welcome. Yes, yes, exactly. You're lucky to get to welcome you in her lap, to her lap, true. I've already accepted and conceded the fact that all I am is but merely a cat butler. In the United States, all vaccines are free, I think. Yes, to my knowledge, I believe that is true. I think that this isn't something to call a win, nor are you going to really get the GOP on this. The reality is, this defense bill is too big, and we should be reorganizing our priorities and save quite the amount of trillion of dollars. $9 trillion, over $9 trillion, because they just got a boost. Too much. Unnecessary. So I actually missed this video a couple days ago, so we're gonna start with this one.
Okay, I couldn't decide if I should do a climate recap format or a deep dive format, so I'm standing in my bedroom. Compromise. Also, I just fell off my bike. I bike to work. It's just an abrasion, but there you go. Now you know I'm a lefty. Fun fact.
Wait, was that a double entendre?
Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beckosphere, where we talk about climate news and solutions. This time I'm talking about COP26, the good, the bad, and the ugly. COP26 took place from Halloween to November 12th. COP stands for Conference of the Parties, so this was the 26th of that. But of course that definition tells us absolutely nothing about it. So basically this conference was the last main international chance we have to get on the same page of reducing greenhouse gas emissions so that we reduce the temperature of the planet to no more warming than 1.5 or even 2 degrees Celsius. We are really close to really missing those targets. In fact, right now we are on track of heating the planet to about 2.7 degrees Celsius. So let's see if countries finally got serious about tackling climate change. But first, I would like to thank today's sponsor, which is Divine Consulting. Divine is a leading provider.
Is COP26 the place that Biden fell? Yeah, he and among other world leaders. Yeah, kind of embarrassing. There's a systemic problem in the US that the military is also a jobs program, education, healthcare. It's almost like maybe these things should just be. Maybe we should have food, housing, education, healthcare. Yeah. That's a thought. Kinetic pause.
Provider in atmospheric science, high-performance computing, and cybersecurity for the U.S. government. Divine provides the manpower, critical knowledge, and tools for agencies to effectively and efficiently pursue their missions. For more information about Divine Consulting and to learn how you too could be of service to U.S. government agencies, check out their website at divineco.com. That's DEVINECO.com. You must be a U.S. citizen to apply. Thank you so much, Divine, for sponsoring my video. Now let's go ahead and get on to the news. Who attended COP26? Well, to answer that, I might be starting with the ugly category of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's start there.
I need a good soundboard, just like the Majority Report. I mean, I have some sounds queued up. But they're not, I don't have a good, like, plethora of sounds. And I can't access some of them at this time because I'm holding a cat.
120 world leaders attended with almost 40,000 delegates registered to come, making it the most attended COP in history. That's great. Media attendance.
No, but I need to add that.
A record high.
I need to add that. That would be a good one. Yeah, one could say I have a tranche of sounds.
Which is also great. But the pandemic, emphasized by a lack of equal access to the vaccine for certain delegates, suggests that not everyone who registered were actually able to attend. There were also visa and accreditation issues as well. No delegates were sent from Afghanistan and Myanmar, and the island nations of Vanuatu and Samoa, sorry if I butchered these, were unable to send their delegates, despite having several registered. Kiribati sent delegates to represent them that weren't from the island itself because they've never had COVID there and they aren't vaccinated, so they didn't want someone who would then come back to the island and potentially infect the population. Vanuatu and Samoa, that's how you should pronounce it, Samoa, are also islands who have never had COVID, so the lack of vaccine availability might be the reason they didn't send delegates. In fact, only 3 island nations sent delegates to COP26. That's Fiji, Palau, and Tuvalu. Usually all 14 island nation leaders attend these events, and so the fact that they weren't there this time quiets a very important voice in this conference that will help argue for relocation costs when some of these islands ultimately disappear under the water. Overall, about 2/3 of civil society organizations who usually send delegates to COPs couldn't and didn't due to vaccination inequality, travel costs, and Britain's hostile immigration system. Then there were the weird event rules, like how during the Leader Summit, only 2 tickets were allowed per constituency, despite there being 6 negotiating rooms operating simultaneously. There were also no opportunities for people to have face-to-face conversations with negotiators. Now, this ticket rule was eventually changed, but the ability for civil society organizers, which includes Indigenous people, to have meaningful conversations with lawmakers was very limited. And overall, Indigenous people were mostly underrepresented during the talks. Meanwhile, Brazil had the largest delegate out of any country, as they have done so on average since the 1990s. Their delegation includes the CEO of Maverna Foods and a chair of Marfrig, 2 meat companies heavily responsible for livestock-related deforestation in the Amazon. Another Brazilian delegate represented the Brazilian Confederation of Agriculture and Livestock, who advocates for meat industries. A representative of the state oil company Petrobras, and a representative from the world's biggest wood pulp producer, Suzano. So their delegates were varied. The second largest country delegation came from Turkey, followed by the Democratic Republic of Congo, then Ghana, and then Russia. Putin did not attend COP26, nor did China's President Xi Jinping, which did not help the effectiveness of the conference since China's the world's largest emitter and Russia's the 5th largest. China also blocked Taiwan from attending, meaning that their emissions couldn't be counted in the overall score. The host, the UK, had the 10th largest delegation, but actually, okay, let's redefine delegation here, because if we were to add up every fossil fuel representative, they would actually make the largest set of delegates sent out of anyone. 11 climate denial groups also sent delegates.
Nice.
So, great representation. Meanwhile, the security was strict on climate activists attending, with hundreds of Extinction Rebellion members being arrested outside of the event. Another disparity lies in gender and age. When over 130 world leaders posed for a COP26 shot, less than 10 were women. Also, a majority of those leaders were over 60 years old. Meanwhile, outside of the event, many activism leaders were women and below or in their 20s. We're talking Greta Thunberg, Dominique Palmer, Vanessa Nakade, and Maya Rose Craig. Some activists were allowed to speak with world leaders in the convention, but I just thought it was an interesting difference between the leadership demographic and the activist demographic that I thought was worth mentioning, because it basically means that women's issues that are very connected to climate change went largely unheard. Another representation issue became clear on the first day when the Israeli Minister of Clean Energy and Water Resources couldn't attend the summit due to lack of wheelchair accessibility.
I saw that. That was pretty messed up.
The next day, but that's just poor planning. So those were things that I considered under the category of ugly, uneven representation. Another ugly aspect was dishonest negotiation foundation. I'm again choosing to talk about the ugly side first because a lot of it is foundational. There are timestamps below where you can skip to the good and the bad and the hopeful parts. So you're welcome to do so. But I thought that this was really important to lay out the playing field in which this event took place. Now that climate pledges are trendy, people are starting to notice that what countries put in their emissions reports in the first place. The Washington Post did a bang-up job breaking down these different pledges. One issue is countries calculate natural carbon capture systems like forests and wetlands differently. Malaysia's forests somehow take up 4 times as much emissions as their neighbor Indonesia, who have similar trees. This figure in general is really hard to calculate, and whichever one is actually more correct will impact the other's emissions rate. But mainly, the Post is seeing that most countries are underrepresenting their emissions to the EU, suggesting our problems could be even more dire than we think. This could change the emissions by anywhere from the amount of emissions the US makes in a year to the amount that China makes in a year. So roughly a quarter of overall emissions could be going underrepresented. Side note, but I just wanted to commend the Washington Post for a calculator thing that they put in their article. Basically, it converts all measurements to car emissions so people can get a better wrap or to be able to wrap their brains around all these emissions numbers, which I think is really smart, and I just want to praise any journalism innovation. So how can countries drop emissions if their baseline isn't even accurate? Well, the UN responded saying it's working on making these reports methods more stringent, forming a new transition plan task force. The Post calculated that about 59% of emissions gap comes from how countries calculate land emissions, which can be both helpful and harmful to the climate. This category encompasses carbon sequestration or upkeep from forests and wetlands and reforestation, but it also includes things like logging and wildfires. In my personal opinion, I don't think countries should be allowed to input how much emissions nature is taking up at all. That should be like the responsibility of a third party. That way, they can't claim that the parts that they didn't tear down are making up for their fossil fuel emissions. Right. If we were to remedy this, then Malaysia would actually shoot up to be one of the top 25 emitting countries. There's also a lack of clarification to what net zero means. Does that mean natural carbon offsets, fossil fuel production with carbon capture attached? The Science Based Targets Initiative recently came out with a net zero standard to try to clarify that, but the UN still needs to make formal standards around it. Another gap in emissions count is with the other greenhouse gases. Scientific research indicates that countries are undercounting methane emissions in fossil fuels, leaking infrastructure, landfill, and agriculture. Countries are also failing to keep track of fluorinated gases called F-gases that can be found in refrigerant and electricity industry. US supermarkets lose a quarter of their F-gases every year, so it does make a difference. A third gap in emissions count is in military operations. When the Paris Climate Accord was finalized, it specifically allowed countries to negate sharing how much their militaries emitted. There's more links about that whole thing in the source section below. There's a long source list that I've linked below. The fourth gap in emissions count has to do with fossil fuel exporting. Right now, countries that export fossil fuels don't have to have those counted in their emissions because instead the countries that bought the fossil fuels counted in their emissions. Some of the top countries exporting fossil fuels include the US, Saudi Arabia, and Norway. By emissions counting this way, these countries can essentially get away with maintaining the fossil fuel exporting side of their money making without any oversight.
Correct.
Granted, if demand dries up, then it won't matter as much, but if we're trying to tackle things from a supply side, this is something to consider. And finally, many conversations conveniently negated historical emissions. The US, for example, would like to point to China like they're the largest emitter, but they're less willing to admit that they are the world's historical largest emitter. And this is important because it contributes to how much responsibility and therefore reparations each country owes developing countries who had little in their emissions record at all. Another dishonest negotiation foundation point lies in the Energy Charter Treaty, which allows energy companies around the world to sue governments over policies that hurt their profits.
What?
Coal and oil companies are already utilizing this obscure international treaty. This could spell trouble for the energy transition. And the final dishonest negotiation foundation point is that there's just a slew of potentially empty promises. Fossil fuel companies' pledges are usually involving dropping operation emissions, but that doesn't speak for their products' actual emissions. Similarly, JP Morgan, who's the #1 supplier of fossil fuel loans, has recently pledged to clean up their portfolio, but will that promise stick? Companies can say things and have their promises entered into the emissions calculations for what's expected for 2030, but that doesn't mean that they'll actually follow through. This is something to just keep in mind in general about basically all the good stuff. Many promises don't come with consequences, leaving the credibility and follow through potentially up in the air. That doesn't necessarily mean that those are bad things or that we should completely ignore all the good progress that happened in COP26, but it's just something to keep in mind. Okay, now let's finally get into the good stuff that came out of COP26. Finance. Over 450 financial firms joined the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, which is chaired by Mark Carney. These groups represent 40% of the world's financial assets, and by joining, they commit to reach net zero emissions by 2050. However, this agreement doesn't require the firms to stop financing fossil fuel projects. Instead, it's framed as a statement of coordination in which each company will orient its operations to seek out lending and investment opportunities that will push climate action and the energy transition forward. If that idea is followed, this could potentially be a very big deal. But without the necessary details, this agreement could be a wash. A press release from over 90 climate groups called the alliance watered down at best. Greta Thunberg interrupted Carney's announcement of more firms joining the financial alliance to call it a greenwashed thing. Reclaim Finance found that the alliance is fundamentally flawed and lacks detail. And the executive director of Greenpeace and a representative from Action Aid disrupted Carney's talk by holding up signs that said your task force is a scam, and were then kicked out of the talk because the conference doesn't allow for spontaneous protests. Activists have also had a problem with the other task force that Carney is heading, which would be talking about scaling up the voluntary carbon market, because people are worried that it would give companies, particularly fossil fuel companies, an excuse to buy up indigenous or restored land that then they can claim in their business to even out their fossil fuel activities. Countries were unable to come up with agreed upon rules for this market, so it's still kind of not a thing yet. Okay, so that good thing didn't sound very good, so let's try this again. Methane. More than 90 countries signed on to reduce emissions by 30% by 2030. The pledge was signed by 15 of the top 30 methane emitters, including the US and the EU. But the top 5 methane emitters are the US, China, India, Russia, and Brazil, and only one of those countries signed it, though China did later say that it would work to decrease methane emissions. The pledge is also voluntary, though the US seems to be taking it seriously based on recent moves by the EPA to crack down on methane leaks. Okay, so that one was a bit better. What else did they do? Deforestation. Over 100 global leaders pledged to halt and reverse deforestation and land degradation by 2030 with a backing of $19 billion towards that effort. This was backed by Brazil, Indonesia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, which together represents 85% of the world's forests. Several government and private entities immediately started to provide billions to indigenous groups who take care of 80% of our remaining wild spaces and to sustainable agriculture.
Sorry, I was fighting with my
However,
cat.
soon after, Indonesia, the world's top palm oil producer, said that the UK misrepresented Indonesia's deforestation commitment, saying that it only agreed to maintain current forest cover, which means trees could be cut down and replaced. Though, will they be replaced? Because Indonesia also said that it's still making ways for infrastructure that will connect over 34,000 villages located in heavily forested areas together. So...
The cat. The cat always wins. Cat always wins.
Oh, maybe not. India. India shocked the world by announcing it plans to be net zero by 2070, the first time it's made any emissions promises. This is the most far off timeline we've seen from any country yet, with China and Russia being 2060 and most others being 2050. But it makes sense to some extent coming from India because they really just started ramping up their development phase while being one of the most populous nations in the world. Prime Minister Modi emphasized the need for developed countries to provide $1 trillion in order for India to reach its target or get more specific on its goals. Global shipping. Denmark, the US, and 12 other nations backed a goal to reduce global shipping emissions down to 0 by 2050. They agreed to come back in 2023 with emissions reduction technology ideas and produce goals for 2030 and 2040 to hold themselves accountable. Now, that is the type of deal I like to see. Holding each other accountable, multiple timelines, good goal. Like it. South Africa. The US, Britain, France, Germany, and the EU agreed to together drop $8.5 billion on South Africa's transition away from coal. This includes building renewable energy generation to make up the difference and to help coal workers switch jobs. South Africa is the most emissions-heavy country in Africa, and it has been needing to update its energy infrastructure as its citizens have gotten used to rolling blackouts. Green tech. The US, the EU, China, Australia, the UK, and India, among about 40 other countries, signed the Glasgow Breakthrough Agenda, which will help direct countries on which areas to invest in first. The
Cats are natural predators,
topics are clean energy, electric vehicles, green steel, hydrogen, and sustainable agriculture. The idea is to have technology to achieve 100% transition in those areas available and affordable to all countries by 2030. New plans to support Green Grids initiative started in the UK and India and endorsed by 80 countries. This idea of linking up all countries around the world to supergrids to even out different areas of access to wind and sun is continuously getting more hype. An Oxford study found that the cost of clean energy technology like batteries and hydrogen electrolyzers could fall in price by 45% by 2030 and 75% by 2050 if they are quickly deployed as suggested by that agreement. The first agreement, not the second one. Meanwhile, the US UAE initiative, backed by 30 countries, has accumulated $4 billion to invest in climate-smart agriculture. The
That's
US
right.
also
It's all
launched the
greenwash
First
BS.
Movers Coalition, which is made up of companies that can harness their purchasing power and supply chains to create early markets for clean energy technology. The coalition has 25 founding members covering topics including steel, shipping, trucking, and aviation. Some members include Amazon, Apple, Bank of America, Boeing, Delta Airlines, Ørsted, Salesforce, and Volvo. Offshore fossil fuel financing. The US and 20 countries announced that it would stop spending tax dollars on international fossil fuel projects as early as the beginning of next year. Instead, they would divert $18 billion towards clean energy each year. China, India, and Japan, which make up half of offshore fossil fuel financing, did not agree to sign up for this, despite China previously saying before the conference that it would do something like that. So that was kind of strange. Coal. More than 40 countries, including Canada, Poland, South Korea, Ukraine, Indonesia, and Vietnam, agreed to phase out coal-fired power. Bigger economies agreed to do so by 2030, while smaller countries would do so by 2040. China, Australia, the US, and India did not sign this pledge. EVs. 11 automakers, including Ford, Mercedes-Benz, General Motors, and Volvo, signed an agreement with over 30 countries to phase out the sale of new gas and diesel-powered cars by 2040, 2035 for leading markets. Some countries who signed this agreement include Canada, Sweden, the UK, and India, with India pointing out that 2- and 3-wheelers represent 70% of global sales and 80%.
Yeah, so just to be clear, like, to my knowledge, none of these pledges, agreements, plans, whatever you want to call them, have any real binding force behind them, or at most, they have like very limited accountability. So to be quite honest, if all of these pledges or all of these companies decide that, yeah, you know what, we're not going to do any of this, they're not really under any obligation, to be quite honest.
% of India's vehicle
to my
fleet,
knowledge,
so
somebody
those should be included.
Fact check me on that, but to my understanding, none of these are really like binding. I mean, like, they sign agreements and they do this and they do the nice PR stunt and things like that, but I don't think that they're actually beholden to any of it, right? I don't think that they actually technically have to follow through. Thanks for the follow, One Sock Man. At least it sounds nice. Yeah, at least it sounds great, right?
Please clap.
2. The US, Germany, China, and Japan did not sign up for this, despite being some of the largest markets, and Toyota, Volkswagen, and Nissan did not sign up for it either, despite being some of the largest global manufacturers. So there's some gaps. US and China. In a surprising move, the US and China announced enhanced ambition towards fighting climate change. It was short on details, but in it they agreed to revisit the agreement at the end of 2022, so it suggests a consistent flow in talks between the two top emitters. BOGA. Denmark and Costa Rica launched the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance, also called BOGA, to wind down production and use of fossil fuels by a Paris Agreement-aligned date. Wales, Ireland, France, Greenland, Quebec, and Sweden have signed on. California, which I recognize is not a country, but I guess it's Quebec, Portugal, and New Zealand have agreed to adopt policies that restrict fossil fuel supply, but haven't agreed to ban licensing for future development. So those are all the main progress points that came out of COP26 talks. I'm afraid there's a few other bad category items that I need to mention though. Greenwashing. Countries overstated their forest carbon uptake capabilities. Leaders made pledges to encourage clean energy production while leasing more oil cells.
Looking at you, Biden.
Pledges and green energy technology while having a history of deforestation and fossil fuel supporting and exporting. Overall, there was just a lot of greenwashing at COP26. Overlooked issues. There has been a growing support for subsidizing the biomass industry, which includes forest wood pellets, which can increase deforestation. This topic was not brought up much during the conference, but many countries consider like the wood chips a carbon neutral form of energy production, despite scientific analyses arguing the exact opposite. Right now, the EU and the UK have the largest biomass markets. Forests are getting cut down in the US, Canada, Eastern Europe, Russia, Vietnam, and Malaysia to make wood pellets. Over 300 organizations from 78 countries delivered a declaration to COP26 asking leaders to reject hydropower in carbon offset schemes and barred new projects from being built using climate funds. This push was led by indigenous peoples who have had to see the impact of dams on their local environments. I don't think anything came from it though. Another overlooked issue was the impact of animal agriculture on climate. Animal agriculture was simply not on COP26's agenda. Instead, nearly 60% of food dishes offered at the conference contained meat, which
yeah, we
kind
went
of
over
speaks for
that.
itself. Any talk of farming mainly centered around forestry, not meat consumption, not farm subsidies, and not food waste. Compensation for developing countries. No decisions were made to help developing countries transition to a more sustainable future, besides like South Africa. And the $100 billion a year promised years ago by developing countries still has not been met. In general, historical emissions contributions by countries like the US and some European countries went largely unaddressed by the countries themselves, but several developing countries like China and India did not hold back in nailing them for it. The problem is a lack of recognition of uneven playing fields makes developing countries wary of letting the US and the EU monitor climate initiatives. So just admit, you guys, admit we're the largest historical emitter. It's not that hard. Why do people have trouble admitting things? Developing countries need 5 to 10 times as much money as developed countries for this transition. Watered down final agreement. When the final document laying out all the agreements that came together during the conference was almost finalized,
It has to be done on a national level. Ultimately, Canada has recently enacted a climate law enshrining targets. Well, yeah, I mean, there must be some type of political will attached to it at the end of the day, right? You're correct, Kinetic Pause. At the end of the day, there has to be political will to even really make any headway.
the little amount that mentioned fossil fuels was further watered down.
Accelerate the phasing out of coal, and subsidies for fossil fuels became phasing out of unabated coal and ineffective subsidies for fossil fuels, unabated meaning without carbon capture tech attached. Then India switched phasing out to phasing down.
So overall, will COP26 make a difference? Well, it depends on the follow-through and the continuation of the momentum. The Climate Action Tracker says that the pledges and targets could get us to either 1.9 degrees Celsius of warming, which would be all right, to 2.6 degrees Celsius of warming, which would be horrible. The only way to close this gap is to create concrete standards and hold countries and companies accountable for following through with their promises. And this leads me into the hopeful section. Points of hope. Ever since Shell lost a lawsuit that resulted in the Dutch court ordering it and its global subsidiaries to cut their greenhouse gas emissions.
Here we go. Ready for some hopium?
45% below 2019 levels by 2030, lawyers and citizens have felt more empowered to sue and campaign against polluting companies and governments for their climate inaction and climate destruction. We should expect to see an influx in these lawsuits and campaigns in the next several years, rivaling that of the amount of lawsuits and campaigns against big tobacco when that happened. The next wave could come at financial institutions to dry up the fossil fuel industry's pool of money. We're also seeing an increase in citizens monitoring and being vocal about their local fossil fuel and petrochemical plants. If we continue to see a push towards closing plants under the principle of human health, the fossil fuel and plastics industry might continue taking hits. Which, by the way, I don't think they really talked about plastic much in COP26 either.
Yikes.
Interesting. More emissions tracking satellites are being launched in space every year, which will help agencies and organizations monitor countries and companies' emissions and hold them accountable. Emissions are no longer invisible. And finally, instead of their—
Okay, but like the problem is, how do you hold them accountable? Like what legislation, what regulations, what enforcement agencies are going to be given this directive? Is the EPA going to have a wider like purview to do like this type of stuff? I don't know. See, like that's the thing.
Original plan of making the next big climate talks in 5 years, countries decided to make the next big ones be next year in Egypt. This is really good news because it forces countries to keep the momentum going. And it will be interesting to see if developed countries will have the balls to neglect reparations for developing countries while being in Africa. So that was the gist of COP26. How do you think it went? Was it a success, an epic fail, or somewhere in between? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Until next time, remember to talk about the climate crisis every single day and to support your local news organizations. And heck, join some local climate organization too.
True.
We need all the help we can get. A big thanks to my supporters on Patreon who help me pay for my equipment and the many news subscriptions. A special shout out to my climate confident and climate courageous patrons, David H, FK.
Cute cat. Alright. Yeah, I mean, like, the reality is, folks, no, it was pretty bad. Pretty bad. Lots of empty promises. Not good. Not good. Benjamin P. Dixon rating with a party of 15. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you for the follow, Danielle Lebuica. What we need is more fuel cell development so we can convert ship engines from diesel. We have different ship technology, right? I mean, like, that's something that we could work on. The transportation from sea is something that we can improve for sure. Howdy, howdy, progressive animal, how's it going? Amma. Sorry about that. Progressive Amma. It's really hard to see with that purple. Thank you so much for the raid. If you guys don't know who we are A Difficult Truth. We do news and politics Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And we do Saturdays, Saturday Catterdays, around noon Eastern Time. Saturdays are a bit more chill. Miscellaneous. Anything can happen. We do IRL streams or video game streams. Or we just hang out with chat. Exactly, Kyle. Exactly. Come hang out. The only thing that is guaranteed on Saturday Catterdays is a kitty cat on stream. Or several. So make sure you hit that follow button. You get 5 free emotes, including Vaquita the cat, who's currently sleeping. COP26 was an international speech platform where polluters could publicly monitor their government servants while they attempt to placate the masses. Go past that, how's it going? Yes, a guaranteed kitty cat on stream. Vaquita was here earlier, but she was being a very naughty kitty. I was trying to get her off, but unfortunately that's not acceptable to her. According to Vaquita, I am her couch until she deems it necessary. So when I tried to get her off my lap, she was hanging on to me with claws and teeth. Just found a job doing fine. That's good to hear. That's good to hear, my friend. Folks, if you don't already follow, please go to twitch.tv/BenjaminPDixon. Hang out with them in the AMs and follow their YouTubes. Reducing regional airline flights is also another big area that's achievable through trains and dirigibles. That's right. That's right. We should have trains and things like that instead of flights, or at least reduce it. I mean, there's also I think there's also ways of changing the fuel for the airplanes that would make it more sustainable. Could be wrong. It's so weird. Stop it. Regional flights massively outsize international flights. Gotcha. That's actually a good point. That's actually a good point. Now I'll have to build a union maybe there, just not yet. I don't get what the issue is here. I'm trying to get my... I'm trying to get my work stuff getting online here, but let's see. What's the issue here? Come on. There we go. Alright, cool. I just want to make sure that I'm good to go. Perfect. Alright, folks. We've got, are heading into the final couple of things that we're getting through. We also went over the channel, talked about everything related to aeronautics. Nice. In theory, compressed peroxide fuel can burn hot enough for airplanes, but there's been little development done. Interesting.
When we were kids, Superman was our hero.
What?
One of the things that our sensors can do are to...
This is a Wendover Productions video, made possible by Squarespace. Make your next move with a beautiful website from Squarespace. This video is a bit of a continuation of my last one, why planes don't fly faster. I ended up talking a lot about the Concorde, the supersonic plane, but part of the story was left untold. Even though the Concorde failed, even though it wasn't commercially viable, it still had a profound effect on how we fly today. Let me explain. Economy class is not how airlines make money. The real money, at least for the traditional airlines, is in premium cabins. Let's take, for example, this British Airways 777. There are 224 total seats on this plane, and it flies daily between London Heathrow and Washington Dulles Airport. A round-trip economy class ticket leaving March 15th and returning on March 22nd costs, at the time of writing, $876. That means that if each one of the 122 economy class seats is filled, the entire back section of the plane will make the airline round trip $106,872. Meanwhile, the going rate for one of their premium economy seats is $2,633 round trip, meaning the entire cabin will make $105,320.
Jesus Christ.
Already, you can see that the entire 40-seat premium economy section makes British Airways roughly as much as the entire economy class section. Going up to business class, there are 48 seats sold each for $6,723, making the airline $322,704. The 14 first class seats are sold for $8,715 each, or $122,010 total. So once again, the 14 passengers at the front of the plane make the airline more money than the 122 at the back of the plane. In total, the 3 premium cabins, premium economy, business, and first, make the airline on this flight $550,034. That means that 45% of the passengers account for 84% of the airline's revenue. Now, I need to add some caveats. There is no airline on Earth that makes $500,000 for a 6-hour flight over the Atlantic. If they did, they would be swimming in money. The fares for this particular routing are significantly higher than the average fare paid for that flight because they're non-stop fares between 2 high-income, high-demand cities. Of course, a majority of passengers on that flight will not be traveling between London and Washington. They'll have connected. If you originate the ticket in, say, Stockholm and connect onto that 777 flight to Washington, the economy class price drops to $392, the premium economy to $1,150, the business class to $3,000.
Interesting. I'm gonna put this video again on chat. Don't they overbook or oversell on purpose? I have no idea. Have you ever tried Flight Simulator Have you ever tried Flight Simulator stuff as you talk about flights? No. No. All the videos from Wendover are great. Gotta hit them up. Gotta subscribe to their channel. Leading climate change activists look to mobilize older Americans. Now here's an interesting strategy. With the younger generation increasingly focused on the problem of rising global temperatures, prominent environmental activist and author Bill McKibben is launching a new grassroots movement to mobilize older Americans to combat climate change and work on related social justice issues. McKibben, 60, has partnered with co-founders Akaya Winwood, a 65-year-old nonprofit consultant, and Vanessa Arcara, a millennial who worked at 350.org to mobilize older Americans. Their new group, known as Third Act, is having a soft launch this week and a full-fledged rollout early next year. Third Act is for people like me, that is to say over the age of 60, the baby boomers and the silent generation above them. It is very clear now that young people are not just on climate but on other important issues like civil rights, doing what needs to be done. Older people need not just assign the hardest problems on the planet to 17-year-olds as their homework. McKibben has spent the majority of his life defending the environment. He began his career as a writer for the New Yorker magazine, as an author of books such as The End of Nature, one of the first popular books about climate change. In 2008, McKibben and a group of students from Middlebury College, where he teaches as a distinguished scholar, founded 350.org, a group that would go on to play a prominent role in their efforts to stop climate change, including organizing the massive 2014 People's Climate March in New York City. But McKibben is relatively atypical for a climate change activist in at least one way. He's a baby boomer, and while boomers are stereotyped as ex-hippies who fetishize organic produce, they are on average more politically conservative than younger Americans, and they are less likely to rate climate change as a top concern or engage in activism to address it. Urging governments, university corporations, and other powerful institutions to change their ways in the face of climate change has become an increasingly common focus on activism in recent years. But as anyone at the recent large protests surrounding the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, Scotland can tell you, they tend to share a common trait. The crowd skew young and often very young. That's the problem for the climate movement, since older Americans have most of the money, free time, and political influence to contribute. Yeah, that's true. That's true. McKibben and his partners hope to get people who may have marched for civil rights or against Vietnam War to re-engage their activism of their youth and join the millennial generation and Gen Z in their efforts to prevent catastrophic climate change. The other main initial area of focus will be defending voting rights from Republican-led efforts to make voting more difficult, such as rollbacks of mail-in voting. Winwood told Yahoo News that they chose two seemingly disparate causes because they're both key civil rights issues, because both the negative effects of climate change and voter disenfranchisement fall very disproportionately on people of color. What weaves these two together is racial equity and justice. We will always be asking that question: how does race and nationality play out here? The polls show that millennials and members of Gen Z, roughly speaking, that would be American born since the 1980, are most likely to say that climate change should be a top concern for the government, but voter turnout goes up with age. In the last year's presidential election, the U.S. Census Bureau reported voter turnout was the highest among ages 65 to 74, at 76%, while the percentage was lowest among 18 to 24 at 51%. Wealth is even more skewed by age, of course. Of course. Catskills, thank you for the follow, appreciate that, welcome. Wealth is even more skewed by age. In December of 2020, the Federal Bank Reserve of St. Louis reported the year before that households headed by 25 to 35-year-olds had $24,000 in median wealth compared to $269,000 among families ages 65 to 75. So McKibben reasons to really move powerful institutions to confront climate change, older people must get involved. Older people need to start taking real responsibility, in part because we caused the problems, and in part because they can't be solved without us. They vote in such large numbers and they control an absurd percentage of a nation's financial assets. I didn't know that our generation, and I'm a boomer, is really longing for a way to contribute, and there's lots of excitement out there. I figured we might be a little sleepy or tired or ready to get our golf shoes on for those that can afford that. But within days of Bill just casually mentioning it in one of his articles, there was like 300 to 400 people who just signed up within hours, and I think it took us all by surprise. The name Third Act is drawn from the idea that people who came of age in 1960 and 70s had a revolutionary first act in their youth, and after a more materialistic and inward-looking second act, a return to pressing for social change will be their next one. It is potentially a very interesting generation, and its first act to witness or participated in profound cultural, social, political transformation, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, first Earth Day. The second act relies on perhaps someone more committed to consumerism than citizenship. So we merge into our third act with plenty of resources. About 70% of the financial assets in the country belong to baby boomers or the silent generation. We emerge with lots of skills, and we emerge with grandkids and ready to try and change that legacy, so that we're not the first generations that leave the world in a much worse place than we found it. Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting tactic. Well, someone's been doing reading before class, how refreshing, and although it's also important to add that caveat that voting does not equal policy. That is true. Yeah, that is true. Voting does not equal policy, but there is a potential for influence. What Americans are aging would have known. True. But there is a potential for influence, especially if those folks who have the money, who have essentially what we would say control over the institutions that do policy, then yeah, it could transform or into something a bit more powerful. So yes, it is a good idea. It is a good idea. It is certainly something interesting, and I hope that I don't know how much sway or power or influence this will gain, but certainly interesting. Thank you for the follow, Malkiada. How's it going? I'm new here. Howdy. Doo-doo. Better than the final act, true. So, it is definitely an interesting concept. I applaud this. There should be more of this. There should be more. And it's interesting that at least some baby boomers or the silent generation are realizing where we stand. And I hope this effort continues. Because it is, at the end of the day, things like this that do have some effect. No doubt about it. Okay. All right, folks. We're continuing on this journey for the New York Times and ProPublica journal. I think there's 3 parts to this. We are on part 2, kind of tracking the ramifications or consequences of climate change when it comes to migration, how it affects people, and what we can expect. This is, this could be the new norm. Should we continue? A woman lost consciousness in a parking lot after Hurricane Laura left her without electricity or air conditioning for several days. Yeah. It is awful. Sometimes people misinterpret the turnout rate as cause of certain policy preferences of elected governments, but it's much more complicated than that. There are definitely some links in nation's age and policy in regards to, say, pension or care of older generations, but that can also be attributed to general social values. At present, the biggest determinant of policy remains elite preference. Age is the biggest determinant of cleavage, which is different. Yeah, but biggest determinant of policy remains elite preference. In other words, big corporations, I assume, and things like that. And yes, it is a bit more complicated than that, but who controls them? Generally speaking, folks on the older side, right? So yeah, I think that it is an interesting tactic. It is very awful. Let's start with some basics. Across the country, it's going to get hot. Buffalo may feel in a few decades like Tempe, Arizona does today, and Tempe itself will sustain 100-degree average summer temperatures by the end of the century. Extreme humidity from New Orleans to northern Wisconsin will make summers increasingly unbearable, turning otherwise seemingly survivable heat waves into debilitating health threats. That's already happening. Fresh water will also be in short supply, not only in the West, but also places like Florida. Nice. Oh, man. Dang it, Kyle. Sad for Buffalo. They are better because they have an openly socialist major. Wait, did they win? I can't remember. But also in places like Florida, Georgia, Alabama, where droughts are now regularly wither cotton fields. By 2040, according to federal government projections, extreme water shortages will be nearly ubiquitous west of Missouri. The Memphis Sands Aquifer, a crucial water supply for Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Louisiana, is already overdrawn by hundreds of millions of gallons a day. Much of the Ogallala Aquifer, which supplies nearly a third of the nation's irrigation groundwater, could be gone by the end of the century. That's not a lot of time, folks. By the end of the century, is about 79 years. That's really, in the grand scheme of things, a blink of an eye in terms of time, right? That's really a blink of an eye in terms of time. That is basically the next generation. It's not some kind of ephemeral thing that's going to happen in the future. It's already on its way. People alive will see it happen. I think that definitely we will. I see the writing candidate one. Gotcha. Here in Central NC, we're seeing huge forest fires due to unusually dry weather. We don't see this here. This is scary. Yeah, unfortunately, like things like that, things that are once seemingly unprecedented, start to become the norm. Are becoming the norm. Yeah, we're after water wars are coming before that. Definitely the strain on resources, our ability to grow food, our ability to get water will definitely pave the path for conflict. I mean, it kind of already is the way it works, right? It can be difficult to see the challenges clearly because so many factors are in play. At least 28 million Americans are likely to face mega fires like the one we're seeing now in California, in places like Texas and Florida and Georgia. Nice. At the same time, 100 million Americans, largely in the Mississippi River Basin from Louisiana to Wisconsin, will increasingly face humidity so extreme that working outside or playing school sports could cause heat stroke. Nice. Crop yields will be decimated from Texas to Alabama and all the way north to Oklahoma, Kansas, and into Nebraska. The challenges are so widespread and so interrelated that Americans seeking to flee one could well run into another. I live on a hilltop 400 feet above sea level and my home will never be touched by rising waters. But by the end of the century, if more extreme projections of 8 to 10 feet of sea level rise come to fruition, the shoreline of San Francisco Bay will move 3 miles closer to my house as it subsumes some 166 square miles of land, including a high school, a new county hospital, and the store where I buy groceries. The freeway to San Francisco will need to be raised, and to the east, a new bridge will be required to connect the community of Point Richmond to the city of Berkeley. Latino, Asian, and Black communities who live in the most vulnerable low-lying districts will be displaced first. But research from Matthew Hyer, a sociologist at Florida State University who published some of the first modeling of American climate migration in the journal Nature Climate Change in 2017, suggests that the toll will eventually be far more widespread. Nearly 1 in 3 people here in Marin County will leave, part of the roughly 700,000 who his model suggests may abandon the broader Bay Area as a result of sea level rise alone. And again, this is the last article was focusing on the kind of global south, right? This one is focusing, I think, on the migration patterns of here within the United States. I suspect that a good way of, getting people to realize, because apparently we live in a we have a mentality of it is not a problem until it's my problem. And I think that it's important to illustrate how it is in fact your problem and you should do something about it. We might need to stop wasting water on irresponsible diets. That's a thought. Dems didn't endorse. In the end, the Repubs funded a lot of advertising and postcards for the write-in. Ah, gotcha. We will be the last generation with Mountain Dew. I mean, again, I haven't had Mountain Dew in years, so I couldn't tell you. If Mountain Dew disappeared right now, it wouldn't faze me. But the former mayor won back during the general election as an independent candidate. Seems like liberal Democrats suck ass. Yeah, that's so weird. Like, how salty do you have to be that either salty or crave power so much that this is what you had to do because you lost the primary? Yeah, I wonder how many drink soda specifically because they have garbage water, grow up with garbage water. True. If you drink Mountain Dew, you're probably the last generation in your family. Oh, no, no, no. Mountain Dew is so bad. That's true. That is true. It's not good for you. Okay, soda is not good for you. Alright? From Maine to North Carolina to Texas, rising sea levels are not just chewing up shorelines, but also raising rivers and swamping subterranean infrastructure of coastal communities, making a stable life there all but impossible. Coastal high points will be cut off from roadways, amenities, and escape routes, and even far inland. Salt water will seep into underground drinking water supplies. Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is the one here in South Florida, the Biscayne Bay. It's not called the Biscayne Bay. It's called something else. Is it the Key Biscayne Aquifer or the Biscayne Bay Aquifer? I forget. Salt water will seep into underground drinking water supplies. 8 of the nation's 20 largest metropolitan areas, Miami, New York, and Boston among them, will be profoundly altered, indirectly affecting some 50 million people. I think we went over a article about how in kind of towards the more west, the droughts have affected already about 40 million people. BRB buying a case of Mountain Dew. A case. Get them while it's still here. Mountain Dew is so bad it takes away your grammar. True. Imagine a large concrete wall separating Fort Lauderdale condominiums from a beachless waterfront, or dozens. I mean, like, even these massive walls aren't going to really solve the problem, right? I mean, okay. Or dozens of new bridges connecting the islands of Philadelphia. Not every city can spend $100 billion on a seawall, as New York most likely will. Barrier islands, the rural areas around the coast without a strong tax base, they're likely, in the long term, unsalvageable. Yeah. And all Hauer projects that 13 million Americans will be forced to move away from submerged coastlines. Add to that, the people are contending with wildfires and other risks, and the number of Americans who might move, though difficult to predict precisely, could easily be in the tens of millions, larger. Even 13 million climate migrants, though, would rank as the largest migration in North American history. The Great Migration of 6 million black Americans out of the South from 1960 to 1917 transformed almost everything we know about America, from the fate of its labor movement to the shape of its cities to the sound of its music. What would it look like when twice that many people move? What might change? A bit odd of a question. I think that the proper way of thinking about it is, well, granted that this is a scenario, maybe we should address it. Coastlines are notoriously the most populous areas, true. I got you, hold on. There we go. I don't get how this information exists and everyone's just like, whatever. Yeah, I know, right? Americans have been conditioned to not respond to geographical climate threats as people in the rest of the world do. It's natural that rural Guatemalans or subsistence farmers in Kenya facing drought or scorching heat would seek out someplace more stable and resilient. Even a subtle environmental change, a dry well, say, can mean life or death, and without money to address the problem, migration is often a simple question of survival. True. True. By comparisons, Americans are richer, often much richer, and more insulated from the shocks of climate change. Like, maybe that's a bit of the issue, right, Dendera? Maybe that's a bit of an issue. The fact that we think that it's not really going to affect us that bad, so maybe we shouldn't care? I don't know. Not to mention how will America deal with the refugees fleeing coastal countries to come to the US? Yeah, as we saw in the other article, not good. They are distanced from the food and water sources they depend on and are part of a culture that sees every problem as capable of being solved by money. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was trying to, exactly what I got at. Yeah, I'm glad they pointed this out. I'm glad this article pointed this out. So even as the average flow of the Colorado River, the water supply for 40 million Western Americans, right, that's exactly what we were just talking about a minute ago. It was the Colorado River, a water supply for 40 million Western Americans, and the backbone of the nation's vegetable and cattle farming has declined for most of the last 33 years. The population of Nevada has doubled. At the same time, more than 1.5 million people have moved to the Phoenix metro area despite its dependence on that same river, and the fact that temperatures now regularly hit 115 degrees. Since Hurricane Andrew devastated Florida in '92, yeah, I was there. And even as the state becomes a global example of the threat of sea level rise, more than 5 million people have moved to Florida's shorelines, driving a historic boom in building and real estate. Yeah, this is a common, contention I have with my parents. We've had this discussion before. It's like, well, if it's really that big of a problem, then why is there so much development? Why is there so much development going on in the coastal lines, in the shorelines? Why are all these multi-million dollar stuff just popping up? I said, well, by the time it all goes to, by the time it all goes to shit, they would have already made their money and then some. They pieced out. They're done. Wait till Nestle and other bottled water companies try to flex their muscle over freshwater rights, and we're going to need massive desalinization plants. Yeah, we're already, I think. We probably should be preparing for that. Correct. Part of the secret aquatic agenda of the Atlanteans. Correct. Yeah, people won't care. People don't care until the food shortages happen. Well, by then, It's already a little bit too late, huh? Similar patterns are evident across the country. Consensus data shows as Americans move towards heat, towards coastlines, towards drought, regardless of evidence of increasing storms and flooding and other disasters. Yeah, like, I feel like I'm the one sometimes that is, I feel like I'm the one that sometimes, I feel like I'm the one that's sometimes living in different realities, because of just, like, how some people act in the face of all this, right? Like, am I the one that's, like, deluded? No. I sent you another more recent article about The Guardian that might be handy to adding to the topic. Gotcha. Yes, they're fish people. They're half fish. Whoa, stop it. Why is Tucker Carlson on my screen? Jesus Christ. No, I have not. I have not read Desert. We also need to clean up the new river which flows from Mexico to California. Well, we would need to do a lot of things, but yeah. But single-digit numbers exterior huge ramifications at stake. We have built civilization based on a world that doesn't exist anymore. The world has already heated up by around 1.2 degrees Celsius on average since the pre-industrial era, pushing humanity beyond almost all historical boundaries. Cranking up the temperature to the entire globe this much within a little more than a century is, in fact, extraordinary. The oceans alone absorbing the heat equivalent of 5 Hiroshima atomic bombs, dropping into the water every second. I believe the oceans take about, what, 90% of something? 90 plus? Yeah. I'm gonna have to save this one for the queue. Add to reading list. No, add bookmarks. Okay. There's some nice geographical, regional graphs towards the middle. Towards the middle. Oh yeah, here we are. Change in fraction of land. Oh my goodness. Frequency and intensity of once in a decade heavy precipitation event, almost about 1.5 times, 10% increase. Yeah, no, it's all not good. Not good. Not good. Yeah, it's a big read. Definitely save it for later for sure. Permafrost is in a cycle of melting, releasing dark material, which would then cause the melt to fast repeat. Yeah, basically, what you would call what, a loop? A feedback loop? Gotcha, James Napper. Oh yeah, no, we're gonna go over this one too. Man, there's just so much material. A fruitback loop, right. Where you get a loop of fruits. Biden rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Yep, basically. The sense that money and technology can overcome nature has emboldened Americans. Where money and technology fail, though, is inevitably falls to government policies and government subsidies to pick up the slack. Thanks to federally subsidized canals, for example, water in part of the desert Southwest costs less than it does in Philadelphia. The Federal National Flood Insurance Program has paid to rebuild houses that have flooded 6 times over in the same spot. Yeah. And federal agriculture aid withholds subsidies from farmers who switch to drought-resistant crops while paying growers to replant the same ones that failed. What? Farmers, seed manufacturers, real estate developers, and a few homeowners benefit. at least momentarily, but the gap between what the climate can destroy and what money can replace is growing. Perhaps no market force has proved more influential and more misguided than the nation's property insurance system. Ha! That is true. That is true. I've talked about this before. That is very true. From state to state, readily available and affordable policies have made it attractive to buy or replace homes even when they are high risk of disasters, systematically obscuring the reality of climate threat and fooling many Americans into thinking that their decisions are safer than they actually are. Part of the problem is that most policies look only 12 months into the future, ignoring long-term trends even as insurance availability influences development and drives people's long-term decision-making. Yep. Even where insurers have tried to withdraw policies or raise rates to reduce climate-related liabilities, state regulators have forced them to provide affordable coverage anyway, simply subsidizing the cost of underwriting such a risky policy, or in some cases, offering it themselves. The regulations called Fair Access to Insurance Requirements, FAIR, are justified by developers and local politicians alike as the economic lifeboats of last resort in regions where climate change threatens to interrupt economic growth. While they do protect some entrenched and vulnerable communities, the laws also satisfy the demand of wealthier homeowners who still want to be able to buy insurance. So, to answer the question, yeah, that's why they, are, still building on the coastlines. Just get rid of them. Which causes methane pockets to explode out of the ground. Yep. Yeah, when it comes to the permafrost melting, it's not good. Alright, folks. We've got, plenty of stuff. We're about half point. We're about half point. So tomorrow we shall continue. Money. That's right. Folks, I do want to thank you guys for hanging out here. I appreciate you guys. You guys are what makes this channel grow. Thank you so much to the Benjamin P. Dixon Show for the raid. Thank you so much for USA Hole for the raid. Thank you for all the new follows. I appreciate it. Please make sure on your way out, if you haven't already, smack that follow button. You get 5 free emotes. Make sure you join the Discord. Join us there for offline conversations or just to keep up with the channel. And also, make sure you go on the YouTubes just really quickly. Hit that subscribe button. You know, the big red button. Yeah, just hit that. Just right there. Like, comment, share, subscribe. It really does help us out. The economic growth term generally needs to be tackled. The concept is antithetical to climate conservation. True. But yeah, but you're right though. It doesn't matter what you sound like. It doesn't matter if you sound like a Marxist. The reality is it's just what needs to be done. Most of the people living along the shore are wealthy enough to be able to survive. I'm less worried about them. Yep. Yeah, the problem is that, like, this false sense of security is a problem. Anyway, folks, I do appreciate you guys being here. You guys are what makes the channel grow. Spread the word far and wide. We are here Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Join us on Saturdays for Saturday Catterdays. As always, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. Love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See ya. Thanks for the stream. Thank you for hanging out. Alright, folks, let's see. Cheers, folks. Be well. Let's head on over to touring news. Dr. Dragon Rider, bye. Thank you. See ya. Oh, wait, before so. Thank you, Darknet. Thank you, Mono. Appreciate it. I see you guys. Thank you. Thank you. I really do appreciate you guys. Let's head on over, folks. Hang tight. We are heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go.